give an invocation of 5 minutes or less, but when I came in this morning and saw Bishop, he said, "You're down for 10 minutes, so I hope you'll indulge a little bit of an extra word or two." Is that all right with y'all? So first, words of gratitude, as always, coming to the Stone Temple Church for me and my family, and I'd like to think my congregational family is like coming home. We've been building a friendship among our communities for a number of years now, and every year that deepens, and that is a gift. And it's a gift that's really precious to me, and I think it should be precious to you because unfortunately, these kind of gifts don't happen a lot in our world. I learned recently, actually just a few days ago, from Dr. Helene Gale, who runs the Chicago Community Trust, that when Dr. King stood up to give what we now call the I Have a Dream speech, the title of the speech was not I Have a Dream. Do you know what the title was? The title of the speech, as he had intended it to be, was Normalcy, Never Again. And someone, right before he went up, said to him, "Tell them about the dream, Dr. King," and thus birthed the dream speech. But he intended to speak about normalcy and its insidious danger, which wasn't new in the civil rights movement. That has been the case throughout all time and all history, because normalcy, acceptance, inertia, this is the power that has governed humanity, and that humanity and religion has fought against since its inception. We heard about this from Bishop just a few moments ago. Think of how we have come to understand and accept things that are quote-unquote normal, that are by no means normal. They have never been, and they should never be, but we are tired. We read ticker news blocks, see reports, we don't know whether they're true or false, and we are distanced from one another. When I turned on my phone this morning to see how long it would take for me and my son to get here, it noted that my house to the Stone Temple Church is 26 miles away. We are 26 miles apart, and I wonder if that is the measure of distance to justify inertia, to justify acceptance, to justify normalcy. Is it 26 miles? Is it the 6 miles from the Loop to Garfield Park that can take 16 years off your life expectancy? Is that the normal? Is that the distance of normal? Is it from one apartment to this church? Is it from one seat to the next? What is the distance of normal that we allow to pervade our lives and the lives of our neighbors, our brothers and our sisters? Distance itself is artifice. It's a construct. We made it up because we're all children of the same God. We are all made of the exact same stardust, as science would tell us. I think I know one of the ways to fight normalcy. And the way we fight it is by knowing each other, is by denying distance. So if I could offer you a prayer before a prayer for the day, a hope for what this day could actually be, it's that everyone in this room not only leaves knowing the name of someone else in this room, but becomes their friend. I don't care how you do it. Get your cell phone numbers, get an email address, go on Instagram or social media and friend each other. Begin to know each other. Because it's true that if you're bleeding, I'm bleeding, but if I don't know your name and you can't call me to tell me you're bleeding, how will I stop the bleeding? And make no mistake, we can certainly place blame to politicians and the news media and whatever other sources there are outside of us, but we can't let that abnegate ourselves from our own responsibilities to bring each other closer, to reweave the web of the social network that is inextricably woven with each of us as a part of it. For this work to count, for Dr. King's legacy to count, it has to happen and count on every day, not just Dr. King's day. And it can start there, but it can't end there. I know that over the past 4 years, Bishop and Pastor Rashorna and I and our families have become good friends. I use that as a personal example, not in our capacity worship leaders or religious leaders, but just in our capacity as human beings interested in each other and each other's family lives. We know about each other's work. We know the names of each other's children. We know our lives, and we weave our lives together when we can. That isn't the reserve of a rabbi or a bishop or a pastor. That is the reserve of a human being, and it is certainly the reserve of anyone who lives in this great country. It's the highest aspiration of what our country was built upon. And everyone can do that here today. So before you leave, before you walk out of this chapel when this service is done, whomever you went up to and hugged in the beginning, get their digits, man. Ask their screen name, their whatever it's called on the internet, who they are. Start to see pictures of each other's lives. Come to know one another. Because that's the type of fabric that can't be torn apart by any politician, by any moment in time, which God will be short-lived. So a prayer. Our God and God of all people, divine one whose image is encoded in each and every human face, diversified and innumerable as the stars in the heavens, whose oneness is interlaced throughout every fiber of every member of the human family. Let us turn to you now to distill the truth of our purpose. Help us, God, this day and every day to resist the idolatrous temptations birthed in the worship of the self. Make clear for us all that in elevating the self, in placing me over we turn ourselves into nothing less than pharaohs, and we harden our hearts to those around us. And we enslave ourselves to the worst of our human tendencies. And so, too, God, open our eyes this day and every day to shine light on the truths too often hidden in the shadows of our time. That a justice system that would have us believe that the price of 16 shots in the back of a 17-year-old black boy is 6.75 years and 3 acquittals. That is not a justice system, that is an injustice system. That an economy where for every $100 in white family wealth, black families hold only $10.29, and Latinx families hold only $12.10. That is not an equitable economy. And it's not acceptable that the lifespan of someone who grows up in the Gold Coast is on average 16 full years longer than someone who grows up just 6 miles west. That according to the Chicago Community Trust, those 6 miles mean you're 9 times more likely to be killed by a gun, 4 times more likely to die from diabetes, and 6 times more likely to be unemployed. None of that is normal. Help us, God, to remember that each of these towering walls that we build with zip codes, school districts, and boundaries we impose with words like good neighborhood or bad neighborhood, these are not of God's making. These are constructed with our own human hands. And they twist and distort our greatest potential, and they deny God's truth that no one person is greater or lesser than any other, but rather that every person is a child of God, an image of God, stands as a partner with God. Each and every one of us destined to be enactors of God's greatest vision and ultimate plan. Dr. King said, "I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be." God of life, God of the possible, God of ought. You know the world as it is not the world as it ought to be. But as your partners in this world's healing and wholeness, we come together to make known to you and to each other this day and every day that our prayers for unity will not be realized through our words alone, but rather through how our actions actions reflect you in this world you created for us. So let us commit and recommit ourselves this day and every day to the urgency of this moment, the urgency of right now, to the holy work of proximity, of getting close to one another, that we might strengthen the fabric of which we are all bound, binding ourselves to each other, tearing down the walls that divide us, building bridges of equity and justice and unity across every block of every hood of this great city in this great country. May it be so in our day. Can I get an amen? Amen.